What's up, Andrew?
Mr. Glaze, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Nice. Thanks for coming on and talking to me today.
Absolutely. You know I love you because live feeds with me on it is terrifying.
We'll do
Absolutely
fine.
terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So,
This is not like false humility. This is honest. I don't know what I'm doing. Straight up.
man, you're brave.
So let's just do it. I love having conversations, especially with people like you. When I decided I wanted to do this conversational podcast, I started making a list of people I want to talk to. You were way high up on that list. First of all, I just think you're fascinating as a human. And then what you do, the organization that you're with, you are doing some crazy cool stuff. I know you work for an organization, Our Calling. We're going to get into that and all the cool things y'all are doing for homeless people and just really anybody hurting. But yeah, before we get into that, I really want, since this is your first time on, I want people to get like a snapshot of you, right? So like how you got to where you are now, just your story, as much as you want to share, just so people can kind of know who they're talking to here.
Two terrifying things.
Okay.
Talking about myself and being on live camera. Ah. um, Man, I grew up in Smyrna, Georgia, and my dad's a pastor. Yeah, he was actually in music his whole life and that kind of thing. And he's from Tucker. My mom's from Smyrna. So, and then I went, let me think. I just got to slow down because life is crazy. It still seems like a movie sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
when I think about myself. So it's really strange.
Yeah.
But uh, grew up in church and Christian school, and then I ended up dropping out like ninth, 10th grade. I did get my GED and all that stuff, but pretty much got hooked into like running with wrong crowds and things like that, and I just didn't feel like I fit in, even like I don't know, like church scene or just you kind of feel like a whatever. So was more attracted to that crowd, and then ended up in a drug addiction from Lord 17 to 25
Mm-hmm.
maybe, but I started using around 14, but like it became an issue like around then, and then my dad would ask me, you have to leave, and because you're stealing all of our stuff, and I was like, that makes perfect sense. I was like, good for you, dad. Them standing up for themselves was actually a big deal,
Yeah.
uh, because they love you so much and want the best for you and all that kind of stuff. But so when I was just turned 18, I got someone pregnant and had Savannah. So my daughter is actually 21, about to be 22 in October. Yep, coming up. So that's a big deal. And then I met my wife shortly after I had Savannah. And oh man, I just passed out on a couch in a trailer when I was 19. I was on a bender, like on meth, like hardcore for 2 years, and then ended up randomly on a couch in some trailer. And it's not like a bad trailer. I just wasn't used to falling asleep in random places. That's all it was. And so I woke up and it was Shandy's place with her mom. And they had recently got her family, her mom and dad split up, things like that. And so anyway, uh, I'd never left her ever since. I've been with Shandy.
Mm.
Yeah, but I'd known about her in other circles and different things like that. So we were in, um,
That's how you met your wife.
yeah,
Great
yeah,
story.
yeah. We just had our 12th year anniversary
Nice.
this time. I've been with her for like almost 20 years
Mm-hmm.
because I'll get there. So have Savannah with Shandy and a bad meth addiction, and parents are just freaking out, all the time. Of course, they're so worried, and even like today in our relationship, they're still just like have some of that residual stuff falling off,
Mm-hmm.
just getting treated really, badly and just worrying a lot. So, it's working through that kind of stuff. But um, so I end up with Shandy in Savannah, and we moved to Alabama to try to get away from the addiction, and it doesn't really work, right? I bring my mind and everything with me wherever I go, right?
Right.
Places don't change. It helps change the mind sometimes, but it's not what does it. So uh, we ended up having to come back to Georgia, and I get arrested, and for like the 10th time, and this is when I'm 25. Well, I got arrested 3 times in 1 month. It's crazy. And it was just back to back to back. And um, the last time I went, it was a big charge. And they were saying it was like, you're going to do 10 years in jail because it was it was almost a pound of meth. And it was in Cobb County in 2009. And this was before they started um, they usually lock you up. They don't really do programs that much. They started to just get it around where, like, instead of locking you up, we'd rather you get help. But the judge was like, yeah, okay, we'll do that, but you still have to serve the other 9 years when you come back. So I was like, okay, whatever keeps me out of prison. Right? Right. Mm. So, go to No Longer Bound. That's when I go at the end of 2009. In the end of 2009, and I go through there, and Shandy divorces me, and No Longer Bound. My mom brings Savannah up the whole time, so I'm able to like still be with her.
No Longer Bound is, just for people who don't know.
A regeneration program out in Cumming, Georgia. They're awesome.
That's where I
So,
met you.
yep, that's where I met. That's where I met Jason. I actually cut for a second to I actually remember, so when I was going through inner healing for the first time, your aunt
Becky.
Becky was the teacher of my mom's class, and
Gotcha.
so she kind of went through it with her, and then
So
started
you
hearing.
was going through so you were going through the program, and inner healing is the part where you really deal with your past.
Yeah.
And they also offered inner healing for the families.
Hmm.
And your mom was going through inner healing with my Aunt Becky while you were in the program.
Yes.
Yeah.
And inner healing is such a hot button word like now, right? Like with other weird words. So I mean, I guess you could put it to other words now as a
Yeah.
process, but that's what it was
Regeneration, I
then.
think, is what they call that part of the program
What do they
now.
call it now?
No, I
Uh,
can't remember. Yeah, I know they've reworded things.
Yeah, they have. I'm
Yeah.
always like, yeah, that's creative. I love it. Don't say anything. I think it's great. uh, so when I went through there, I had like my old self ripped apart, and I just started getting introduced to like all that cool stuff, and so it was like a whole new world,
Nice.
right? And you start to feel some freedom. And this was like the 6th or 7th time that I'd gotten help. Yeah, because I'd done other stuff, but it was the longest I'd stayed to recover for.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, and I didn't even make it through actually. Stephen Belcher was
Yeah.
like, I was started talking to Shandy even after she divorced me when I went home, and he was like, "You can't do that," and I was like, "Okay," so I keep on going back, and then he's just like, "You have to leave, but I'll tell you probation. That's all good." I was like, "Yes."
So you got kicked
So,
out. So you got asked to leave the program, but they told
yeah.
probation you were good to go.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. Because I basically made it all the way through. It was the last 2 weeks, and it was just legalistic stuff at that
Right.
point. So it's all good. Anyway, so from there, it's I get on probation. When I go back in front of the judge is like, uh, "That's awesome. You completed it. You need to you'll do the rest of the time on probation." I was like, "My God, I wish she would have told me that a year ago. Probably wouldn't have tried as hard
Right.
in where I was at." If I wouldn't have thought that for some reason, I don't know, I'm just like, it's all lost, it's all gone, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, might as well go for it.
You thought you were going to be doing prison time even after you got done with No Longer Bound. And he ends up
Yeah.
saying, hey, you can just do the rest of your time on probation.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So in the car, I'm like 10 and 2. I ran a stop sign and I'm like, Lord Jesus, don't lock me up. Anyway, so in that whole thing, I started getting into the whole counseling thing and like
Mm-hmm.
and like teaching, and just it just makes me curious of like how these things inside of me started to like free up and go away. And is it because I like put in the work, or is it because like the Lord says who He is? Because I came from that background where it's like not as trusting in some areas, right? So it's just like filtering through all that, and it's the first time like I've gone through the process many times now, and it's a lot different every single time, and the Lord looks a lot different, and uh, anyway, so really grateful for that, and I thought that's what I wanted to be doing. Remember I went to you have to get these hours, right? And I had like 4,000 hours with people, and then you have to go do these classes for the CAC. So I started doing
The
classes.
CAC is just for people
It is a Christian
certification
certified Christian, no, certified
addiction counseling. Yeah.
addiction counselor. Thank you, Jason. It's been a
Yep.
long time
Yeah.
since then. Yeah. So yeah, I should know that. Well, no, I shouldn't. And so went there, and the last class was or not the last class. I had like 4 more months to go, and Blake Chapman is no longer with us. He's a good friend of
Mm-hmm.
mine, and he was actually my inner healing teacher that time I was talking about. So
Rest
he
in
was
peace,
there,
Blake.
and we sat through a class together. And after the class, I was like, it makes me like, I'm glad you're here because it finally made me realize I don't want to do this. I was like, no, this isn't it. So I was working another job, and my sister is rescuing girls out of sex trafficking because she actually left an addiction too as well, like right in the same year. So she went out to another program agency out in man, it's out in Georgia somewhere. It's New Beginnings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she went in to do that, but after that, she went straight into ministry where she was running a house and women were coming in. So as I was figuring out like what was going on with me and my whole thing, she was doing that. So what happened is when I was like, I started. Long story short, she hooks me up with a place that is helping her do all the rescues and stuff. Right? It was Atlanta Dream Center, and they ended up forming Out of Darkness, which was the safe house. So she worked with them for about a decade, and then I started out there for the first year doing some stuff, prayed about it, went there, and then they started letting me do placement. So I kind of skipped over from my life story, and I'm kind of leading into
Good.
like
Yeah.
where it is.
Go.
And this is why it blends though, because it's all I've known, and it feels like a movie sometimes. Like I went straight from like what I went through, all the trauma, all the addiction substance. You get out, and then like for some reason, like you're trying to find your way in how to give back, and then how to heal, and like all these weird things that are happening, and then you get opportunities, and you can risk it, and or you can stay in the job or whatever you feel God called to do, right? But there is risk with everybody's situation. So I started just taking that risk because I so in that I have felt called, but in my life that's all I've known is like the addiction, and then you're kind of coming out and recovering, and then now you're kind of giving back, and then you end up, and now like I was at the Dream Center, and they're rescuing women out of sex trafficking. And so when I was going out on outreaches with homelessness and different things of that nature, I was like, well, I've been to so many programs through my life and been to jail. Like I can relate to what that guy has, and like he would be a great fit
Right.
for that place over there. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So anyway, I walk him over, get him in. It's like, great. And then the next guy might need an intake fee, and I'd go to a church and be like, I need $500. And they'd be like, yeah. So kind of started raising money that way, and I've always kind of been an entrepreneur, like when it comes to like doing things like that. So they say that I can do placement, and this was in 2013 at Atlanta Dream Center, and still me and Shandy married. When we divorced, we ended up getting remarried. So that's why I was like, it's 12 years this time, right? So we've been married twice. uh, 3 ceremonies. We didn't file the paperwork out, so we've kind of only been married 3 times.
So wait a minute. Wait a
Yeah,
minute. So you got married,
yeah,
divorced you in the program, you got
yeah.
remarried. How did we get 3 ceremonies out of that?
She was sick as a dog, and I was like getting in ministry, and I was thinking like, if we're having sex as soon as I like got out, right? Well,
Right.
like a month or two in when I got to know my bound, but you try not to, I guess. But in my head, I was like, Shandy, look, we're only gonna have sex with each other. right? Like that's what's different. It's like, right? I was like, that makes sense. And so
Because when
anyway,
you're in your addiction, it was a free for all.
free for that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah,
it's a big deal to just all of a sudden just be like, and you're the person that I will only do this with,
right.
right? Anyway, so how did we go from 3 times? Yeah. So she was sick as a dog. My dad was doing a Christmas Eve service, and I took the opportunity. I was like, honey, everyone will be there at the Strand. I was like, let's get married. There's a pastor on stage. After everybody gets done, people will stay. She's like, was totally pissed off about it, but she ended up doing it. She did have the flu. So then when he married us, we never just got the thing signed and because her dad wasn't there. But um, I did want to do it to make to like look better. Like in the back of my head, I'm like, we're doing something bad. And even in my journal that I'll write down, it's like all my frustrations, right? That we learned how to do. Best tool ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so writing down just like of how like the shame that goes with it. Like you can see through it. Like it wasn't like easy for me. I don't know for whatever reason. But so that's how we got married 3 times. And then we got
Nice.
married again in the mountains at a casino and her dad was there.
Gotcha.
And that was goal complete.
Gotcha.
Uh
So you're at the Dream Center,
Dream
and you
Center.
figure out, because that's one thing I know about you. If you have a gift in placing people, networking people, making connections, like that is your primary gift. And it sounds like that gift was kind of developed through you had been through so many programs, you had been through so many institutions or whatever, that you figured out what works and what doesn't work for this person or that person. So, like, intuitively, you're kind of starting to learn what works and what doesn't. So, you're doing some homeless work, helping place. It sounds like girls that are being rescued out of sex trafficking, and that gift that you learned the hard way just kind of starts taking over. And next thing you know, you're really good at connecting, networking, and placing people. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Uh it's real strange working with people too. Right. So it's like, and even in homelessness, like when I first started doing it, I was like, well, I don't think I can mess this up. It's just what I thought in my head. I was like, and that's your situation now. So when I'd start to go talk with people, I'd be like, yo, dude, like, let's go. And hopefully they wouldn't fist fight me because I couldn't come at everybody just like that.
Right.
But, if I'm just trying to love my brother is really what it is. When I see somebody, my heart hurts. I want to go talk to you and see what's going on naturally.
And so then you end up finding your way to an organization called Our Calling, and
Yes.
they are based out of Dallas, correct? Dallas, Texas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Downtown Dallas, Texas.
And then now you just moved back from Georgia, but you're still working from Our Calling. You're just working remotely because you're basically, your job is a lot of behind the scenes vetting and stuff like that, which we're about to get into.
Yes, sir.
So just give us kind of an overview of Our Calling. Explain that ministry.
Yeah. Our Calling is a nonprofit Christian outreach resource center.
Okay.
So it opens up around 7. People line up around the building. You have about 300 people that will come in. It's low barrier. So you don't have to have services. You don't have to check in. You can just hang out if you're tired, right? There's a payphone in the front of the building. It's wild. They call the cops all the time. so anyway, but so they can go in and they can rest. And then when the day starts, they can get showers, clothes, and then they can talk to an intake person, and then we also do feeding as well every day at the same time. And so in the meantime, we have about 20 care ministers, is what we call them, who have conversations with people who are just hanging out, right? And when they're having conversations, right, there's TVs on, the vibe's cool, really nice facility, and you can talk about like their life, what's going on, but our care ministers want to ask them, do you know Jesus and would you like to get off of the streets? Those are the
Mm.
two things that everyone asks them. And so, and that might be further on down when we do, right? And it's not very first thing like up front, but those are the two things that they would like to get. We have an app where, I'll back up. Um, Upstairs they have a women's center. So like if you're a woman and like you want to get away from the down population, you can go up. And so they do placement out there as well, right? It's just kind of sanctioned differently. You can be a woman down there, Lowberry, but if you want to get away, the women's center's upstairs. So, um, 300 people a day, conversations happening. We're getting questions from everybody answered. How you doing, right? The goal is really not to fix them, right? The goal is just to have a conversation with them and just hang out with them and make them feel loved. If that's, awesome right there too. So that's the interesting thing trying to navigate, because when you see trauma, like, and people going through it, like this week there was a kid who had to get ripped away from the mom. CPS came and did it in front of the whole staff, and the kid
Oh,
was
wow.
screaming, right? Everybody's just like, oh my gosh, I can't unhear those screams, and like, right? But when you see it, you react and you want to fix, you want to help, and you just don't know how to. So like everything in you just starts to come out. Like, would you like a pen? Can I tie your shoe?
Right.
Things
Just
like that.
small things, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sure, and it works, right? And
Yeah.
so, but anyway, so and then we also have you have a center that's going on Monday through Saturday. We have people talking with other people and connecting them when they answer the say they want to get off the street. We connect them to a bunch of agencies and try to get them off the street. We'll talk more about that, but they have like vehicles and an app. So this app, you have people who download it, and when you see a person on the street, you can just take a picture of them and then boom, 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 jot it down. Well, then our teams will come and talk to them and say, how are you doing? And have the same conversation that we're having in the building. They just have
Mm,
it out of the building.
gotcha.
Um, People are a little bit different outside of the building than the ones who are filtering in the building, because the ones that are in the building, there's like shelters on the outside. In Dallas, they pushed everything kind of off to the side, but it's in the city. And so everything kind of rotate in here, which is kind of smart, because you can successfully be homeless. And like in some cases have more than other folks, all depending, but a lot not. So but the app is really cool and draws people in, and you can actually, go out. It's like Pokemon almost, is how I think about it sometimes. You go out there and you can play live, and the thing is like find a homeless person. Bing. But it's more than that, right? We're trying to take care of them and figure all that stuff out. There's a lot that they do. They just got 188 acres, 30 minutes away in Ellis County, and they're building a tiny home village.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like 500 tiny homes. Like they're doing the first phase right now, and the idea is the people that we can't place,
Yeah.
right? That they'll go there, and that's pretty much the last place they'll be before they die. And so that's what we want to do, because there are a lot of people that we find outside of the gates that are dead, and like all that kind of stuff, just because they're not getting the care. They're just stubborn and don't want to get help, whatever the deal is, right? Who
Right.
cares, right? So we just want to get them to where they're stable. But I started the project. It's like 50 million, or like, no, I think it's more than that, but really cool, because people can come volunteer all over the country and come hang out. I mean, there'll be like a church, like medical, the whole deal. And you like section off like more like elderly folks over here. You could do like, however you stack it. But they did their own water system. They had to get a well. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So you
Mm-hmm.
got the facility where people come in off the streets, they get food, they can get a shower,
Yeah.
and then it sounds like the goal there is just to start making connections through having conversations, right?
Yeah.
Then you start learning about the person, start learning about their story, their background, learning what they need, develop trust, build rapport. I
Yeah.
love the two questions. Do you know Jesus? Do you want to get off the streets? And then y'all also have the app, which is you can ping a homeless person and then y'all go to them. So I get it where those two would be different. The people coming to the center, to a degree, they're coming in wanting help to some on some level.
Mm-hmm.
The person on the street that you're going to, now we're kind of cold calling is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't ask for anything.
Yeah.
So now it sounds like that would probably be like a whole nother conversation of how to break in there. What
Mm-hmm.
I love about what y'all are doing, that because you and I have had some conversations in the past, what I find fascinating is the amount of data that y'all get and how you track people that you place. So you get someone, you start having these conversations, and you realize, okay, this person is ready to get placed, whether it's in a shelter, a rehab, whatever. And y'all have vetted a ton of organizations. And so you're kind of figuring the person out. Then you have all these organizations that you connect them with. And then to me, that would be a normal place just to stop, right? But y'all don't even stop there. Now you're even tracking their progress through that wherever you sent them, seeing how all that's going. And to me, that tracking system to where y'all are really learning about what's working and what's not is fascinating and a game changer. Talk about that a little bit.
Definitely makes it more interesting. That's the one thing a lot of places are doing placement somehow, some fashion. But the retention number always gets foggy because it's really low a lot of the time. And I don't know, but we started when a person is working with someone, they basically let our team know, the placement solutions team. And then when we look at the file of the person, picture, all the questions answered, then we start to connecting them with services, right? So we want to figure out, we're like moving a human body, right? And so a lot of times you get them there and it is great. And we don't want to be too enabling where we're a crutch, because that starts taking a lot of time, but we want to put them in a community to where they're taken well care of and explain all that to them. And sometimes it's easier than not, because some of the mental health that's going in there is just a different type of placement, right? With a different type of care, with nursing homes and mental health physicians and all that kind of stuff. So it's just interesting connecting. But when the person stays there, if they leave in 3 months and then we see them back on the street again, because in Dallas, we place them somewhere that's local in the 50-mile radius and they show back up to our calling, it tags us. Bing! It says this person showed back up. So the conversation when the person walks in is like, hey, you were at this spot over there. Why did you leave? And they would tell them and they would just make notes. And then when our care managers see it, we can like gently be like, hey, like, how can we pray for you? Like what happened, like, I'm so sorry, whatever. A lot of times the placement will get the bad rap and just be like, it's placement's fault. But it was better than what they were doing, and that's getting them stable enough, right, to even have a relationship with the Lord. Like, I'm seeing that more when you go into our calling. When you walk in, they have partners. So not only are we connecting to agencies in the country, but we're also connecting to mental health services, food stamps, benefits. Like, there's a different partner in all these offices the whole time, so it's a one-stop shop. You can get your IDs, the whole deal. So we're getting smarter at how to connect people quicker to those services. Even if you want recovery and you have zero insurance, like, I'm starting to have a guy that can call and get you insurance in 30 minutes to get you through where you need to go.
Wow.
And it really won't mess like credits up or different things like that. Like, so it's just like finding new things to get people the help they need. But yeah, running retention, you like almost start to like want to track the person. And if you care for the guest, like you're saying you do, right? And you're connecting them with a community where you don't have to like do everything, right? It would be them. Then yeah, we want to know where you're at, and we'll touch base every 30 days and see if they're abandoned, if they left, if they're rejected. And then around 6 months, we'll check in with them because they might need another placement on the back end as well. We also have stories. We're also paying for their entire program, right? And and that's on the like and trafficking. Like, well, the girls were getting girls out of trafficking, and we're finding places that will get them on their feet and totally get them out of their situation too. So yeah, it's pretty interesting because I could say I sent 10 people to this agency, and we see that the turnaround's really quick around this time, and it's this type of person, right? Maybe a Hispanic, right? Something like that. Maybe they don't speak well English. Like, I don't know. There's just so many scenarios, but no, they want to track it. They track every article of clothing that comes through that bad boy. Like, every conversation. It's hard to gauge salvations or like spiritual stuff, especially when you're on the street, like connecting for the first time with like surface stuff, right? So yeah, man. But I love our calling. It's great they let me move back here. We were missing family, and wanted to get back around. So we're happy to be here. Me and Shandy are trying to. I think we're gonna get a house like near like north, like Kennesaw, Paulding, something like that. So we're
Nice.
waiting a couple more weeks. Gonna be
Yeah.
out that way.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciated about your approach, and I want to share what I appreciate, and then I want to ask some questions about the foundation of that. You really do approach people as a person, right? And I know that sounds like duh, but when you have that many people that you're dealing with, y'all deal with hundreds and hundreds. I'm guessing if you look at the number of people you deal with within a month, you're looking in the thousands. And to treat each one like a person and not see them as a number or a problem to fix, to me, that is it's a foundational principle that I think is missing in a lot of ministries like that. Now, I want to back up because I know a lot of your story. When it comes to like having a heart for the homeless, this started with your grandfather, correct?
Yes.
Tell that story.
Yeah, that's right. You're so smart. Yeah, he was doing homeless ministry when I was around like 5. He would go out to Mount Perrin, off 41, and there was Metro Bible Study. And they'd go out every Friday night and they would hand out food, and his whole basement was covered in food, and he loved to give things to people and show people new things. And it was more loving on people. And then started doing a church out of there and out of Mount Perrin during that whole thing. So it was kind of cool to grow up in.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really register at all because like I don't really care about homelessness. Like I care about people and they
Mm.
happen to be in homelessness.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah. And so because homelessness is not who you are, it's something you're going through,
Mm.
right? Like you could do that with anything. Like, oh, oh, you're a prostitute? No, I just happen to be in prostitution. My name's Amy. You
Mm.
know? So it's just something that we do. That's not who we are. And I've had to learn that in my own life to navigate through a lot of the things. I still navigate that, right?
Yeah, that is huge, though, that you're not. Because honestly, when we see a homeless person, for me, and I guess that many would share this, that's the first thing we think. There is a homeless person. But to kind of retrain the brain of, no, that's Steve or that's Richard who happens to be in homelessness. This is so cool because this happened to me the last year. We had a homeless guy. He was living in his truck, and just right up there's a restaurant right beside our office, and he's obviously homeless, living in the truck, doing some salvage work out of his truck, just trying to get scrap metal or whatever. And I just kept looking. I would wave at him every morning. If he was awake, I'd wave, and because he would be his sleeping. I noticed his sleeping schedule was really weird, right? So if he was awake, I'd wave. He'd wave back, and finally, I was like, God told me, "You don't even know this guy's name. Go find out his name." And his name is Richard, right? That's what I found out. So I just went up and talked to him one day. Started talking to him. I started like getting a little bit of his story. He kind of told me how he got to where he was. And yeah, it was great because then the guy sleeping in his truck at the restaurant no longer became a homeless person. Hey, there's Richard. And I think that's a big deal. I think that's an important component when we think about trying to help people in that situation. So yeah, that's really good. That's powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
But you were learning this stuff just by watching your grandfather. Like
yeah.
at 5 years old, helping the homeless is just
Yeah.
what you do. So it's kind of like it sounds like it was normal for you.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of how many times like actually when it was in a time period of like he did it a long time in my life. I probably didn't even know like, it kind of got normal.
Hmm.
So streets have always been interesting to me, just in general. What happens on them? What are you doing out here?
Hmm.
Public, right?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
watching you. Like that's another thing. Like even like I don't know. It's just strange. Oh well, my dad. I grew up watching him because he's a musician, so he was on stages and we get up there and sing and whatever. Like ended up playing drums at 11 and doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And but now it's funny because I come down here and he's like, "Well, you could play drums over here, there at this church," and I was like, "It's terrifying to me actually right now because I've taken such like a 2 year break and now I'm just like people are watching you and it's live. I was smoking crack to do that for 10 years in front of people. But I love playing drums, it's great.
Let's go here.
Okay.
So you mentioned something briefly a few minutes ago that I think is also important because one tension when we're dealing with people who are in a homeless position is, when we cross that line of enabling.
Hmm.
I remember I was at a conference one time and there's two guys there that wrote a book. I don't remember their name, but the book was When Helping Hurts.
Yeah.
And they were doing a lot of outreach type work and they started figuring out that sometimes they were actually hurting more than they were helping.
Hmm.
And it sounds like that tracking people the way y'all are is a good way to figure out, okay, we're not helping Joe at this point. We're actually hurting him. We're actually have crossed into that enabling area. So then
Yeah.
y'all can start making adjustments, right?
Yeah. 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 It's having those conversations. Uh, yeah, because and even with our showers, we can cut you off of services as well, and we have done that before, and it's worked out. You know, and sometimes it hasn't. So you just kind of got to figure out because you don't really want to do that if the mental health is too strong and too bad because like right and I don't know. We get to have a conversation as a team to figure out what's the next step, right? So when they do walk in, if we do take services or whatever, it flags them, right? Because I was talking about flagging them before, and now it just says, "Hey, they're no longer here." So then security will just talk with them, and we can have conversations, and we are all about de-escalation, and it's just to make them like we're trying to get you somewhere that you don't want to get to, right? Like we're trying to get you out of homelessness, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
and so there's some stuff like that, but yeah, and man, that enabling thing is what we're all navigating through as an organization and in my own life
Yeah.
of like just like doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you said it great when just like what was it about it's God's ability, right? And I'm just responding to like his ability.
Responsibility is my response to God's ability.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That takes a little bit off the pressure off as far as when
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing that. But when you're working like with my team, when you see trauma, it's more about working as a team and right together. But and then us feeling good about a decision because if I try to do it by myself, a lot of the times it's just who knows what angle and how I feel that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think you made an interesting point too, and this again goes back to how y'all basically deal with individuals. And because, like, let's say somebody comes back three times and you flag him, if y'all was to create a policy, okay, three times and you're out, then you've got someone with some legit mental
Yeah.
health issues, and you don't want to give them those parameters. You want to
Yeah.
treat that guy different because, we live in a time where mental health is everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, right? And in my personal opinion, it's getting overplayed a little bit in normal society. Here's what I mean: like people say, "I have depression," and
Yeah.
well, you probably are just depressed.
Yeah.
Having depression and being depressed is two different. I have anxiety. Well, no, you're just anxious. But then you have those legit people who really, really struggle. Like I had a guy the other day try to convince me he was schizophrenic. We just came down to no, you got a Holy Spirit who's saying one thing, and you've got your flesh saying the other, right? But then you've got legit people who are schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you're dealing with homelessness the way that y'all do, you're dealing with the you're dealing with the next level of mental health problems. So yeah, I can see how having awareness of that is key.
It's weird because we're going through like recovery, you have this mindset and it has to do it to get you out of something and you learn about things, but then like I remember when I relapsed. That was well, it was like I was wanting to drink. It was planned, and I like for like months and months I would like talk like, should I drink? Should I not drink? Should I pray about it? Whatever. So anyway, I did, and then and then it was fun. We went out, whatever, nothing wrong. And so the next day, I remember I was talking with somebody. I think it was like almost 5 years in that I was sober, and and so sober, right? And so then the I was talking to a buddy, and he's like, we were talking about time. He was talking about how much time he had, and I was like, well, yeah, I have. And I remember how distraught I felt. I was like, man, like I had all this time and like all these things that I made in my head, and like, and so that was one to wrestle with. But then like the Lord started showing me some things of like starting to normalize some things for me in some ways that I needed, because I was in a recovery circle. So that helped seeing people for where they were, because if I had that same recovery mindset walking into some of the people, like I'd probably be a little judgy.
Right.
And I have been many times working with people. It's just kind of worked itself out over the years, and I still catch it too when I'm working with somebody. It's more or less about me, not them. But
Yeah. Well, Andrew, if because I know y'all work with organizations not just in Dallas, but you're
yeah,
starting to kind of expand the horizons. I'll put up your website and everything on this podcast, and then I'll make sure everybody knows how to contact your organization. But like, if somebody was watching and they're in this area, or they're in this arena, sorry, they're kind of doing the same type of work you're doing, and they want to connect with Our Calling, right? What would be the best way for them to do that?
email Andrew@ourcalling.org.
Gotcha. So
Yep.
email you at Andrew@ourcalling.org.
There's so many things that it could be. I just want to make sure that I would connect somebody the correct way. And so, yeah, I would just email me if you're listening to this stuff, and we'll figure out what we can. It's such a great organization.
Great, great. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing what you're doing. Thank you for doing the hard work, and thank you for doing the work that y'all are doing. You're really making a difference, and yeah, man, we really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing.
Absolutely. I love you, Jason. You're
Love you too,
great.
bro.
All right.